Hello, LinkedIn. Welcome, everybody. Great to welcome all of you watching from different sides of the planet. Hopefully, we are doing another live to answer some of the many questions that came as part of the Makers and Movers. And we have today with us Amit Bagga, who is the Chief Revenue Officer of FarEye, directly from DHL Tower in Bonn. So, welcome, Amit. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Radu. Great to be
And
here.
and then we have Martin Holme, who is the head of lead logistics for global head of lead logistics for AP Møller Maersk from Singapore. Martin, welcome and thanks for joining.
Thanks. Thank you, Rado.
Super. So I'll start. There were quite a few questions that came up. So maybe I'll start with you, Martin, and let's keep it a big picture, right? So from big picture to the details, key trends, right? The topic of the summit was the future of supply chain. What do you see as key trends that will shape the future of supply chain?
Yeah, there are quite many, Rado. Maybe let me just pick out a few. Maybe let me try and pick the top five that I think I'm seeing right now. Some of the ones that are continuous from quite a while ago is digitalization and sustainability. They've been going for quite a while, but they're still very strong trends. The rise of e-commerce has also been going on for a while, but obviously has picked up tremendously over the last 18 months. And the same is true for resilience. So that's definitely another one that has picked up big time in the last 2 years. And I would say along with that, probably a regionalization of supply chains is happening as well. I think honestly, before the trade war and before the pandemic, we saw a strong overweight of focus on cost in the supply chain. And I would even venture to say that for the last 4 decades, from China started opening up in '78 to the trade war in 2018, we kind of saw one big mega trend of just going global and China becoming the factory of the world. And a lot of focus, a lot of drive behind that trend was really cost. But of course, now with the trade war first and then the pandemic, this has changed quite a lot. And I must say that my hope for the future of supply chains is that it becomes a more holistic focus across the many different outcomes, the many things that a supply chain can deliver, and that each company kind of takes a view of what's my business strategy, and therefore what is the supply chain strategy and the supply chain design that I need, and then therefore what are the outcomes that I need to drive, and then finds that subset of outcomes to drive. But anyway, that was maybe too long an answer, but those are the trends and kind of the future that I see for supply chains.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'll double click because I want to pass the ball to Amit, and I'll double click on the e-commerce omni-channel. Obviously, FarEye, you have a suite of solutions for last mile, for visibility, for tracking, for logistics, and the complexities and what Martin said, also cost, right? That management of cost versus customer expectations. So maybe talk to us about that, Amit.
Absolutely. Just actually carrying on into Martin's theme on exactly what he said. You couple these challenges that we're seeing in the supply chain, and technology stepping into, help solve a lot of these problems. A lot of this is also coming from the fact that, the conversion of devices and conversions of buying power has really changed the game. And the consumer is driving a lot of this as well. Their ability to engage and demand unique buying experiences. They want to be having everything here now, right now, and cheap at zero cost, delivered to them. The whole e-commerce boom is having a whiplash effect all the way down to the factories in China. Because what do you manufacture? Where do you manufacture? How do you supply? Where is it in the supply chain? And how do I guarantee that happening without it getting clogged in the ports in the west of the US, while still meeting Christmas demand and all those elements? And how do you make those things happen? So when you look at that and you look at the way these goods from the manufacturing plants need to reach the houses of the consumers anymore, not even just stores, is really creating that complexity in the supply chain. And we are starting to work in elements like providing that visibility across trade lanes, providing the visibility across the different modes. And it used to be just getting visibility of containers moving. Now we're looking at, parcels within containers, and where at the SKU level, where is it right now, and how do I replan my supply chain based on the location and based on the blockages in different places. And then you layer in exactly what you said, Martin, the whole area around sustainability and knowing how you drive carbon emissions down. And that's when you now come back to the last mile, and not only just the cross border, but when you come to the last mile, we're starting to work with different types of companies that are actually solving that by driving a zero emission delivery model, right? Which is great. So we're working with a company called Urbit in Sweden and France and all, which is basically doing a zero emission delivery model. Hive in the UK. Now the challenge that comes is it's not just how you optimize those routes and how do you solve the problem of reducing carbon emissions, but you got to plan for the new age vehicles like EV vehicles, right, which have got certain amount that distance they can travel, certain loads that they can carry, and you continuously optimize all of these while still meeting those SLAs that the end consumer is asking for. They want their delivery slots. They want to be able to change it. They may want to change a location, and how do you replan in real time to make that happen? There's one more thing is we are working with, obviously through traditional delivery models, but working with our customers to help give consumers the choice to say, if you choose these slots, or if you choose to be delivered in this way, you help the environment by reducing carbon emission. Would you like this choice better, right? So we're starting to use technology to weave in the mission of the companies into the way the offering is done to the consumers, right? So visibility provides that ability for you to make those decisions in supply chain in the long hauls, but then you start optimizing in the last mile as well.
Yeah, definitely recognize a lot of that, Amit, and also of course the whole. Many of my customers, at least, used to run the e-commerce supply chain was run separately from the wholesale supply chain, and it used to be that the e-commerce supply chain was maybe just 10-15% of the overall supply chain, so it was kind of a thing on the side. But obviously that's not true anymore. Now it's 25 or 50 or sometimes even more than 50% of the total supply chain, and that means you can't run that on the side anymore. It needs to be either omni-channel, or in fact the e-commerce supply chain becomes the main one, and the wholesale supply chain becomes maybe the secondary supply chain. So lots of complexity there in terms of how do you have the ability to reallocate your inventory, make a decision later in the process about which of the inventory is going into wholesale, which of it is going into e-commerce, and how do you then allocate even down to a piece level.
Exactly. Given that 50% of the cost of logistics sits in the last mile, the whiplash from the long haul, we need to continue to strive how we reduce that whiplash into the last mile and drive the cost down in the last mile.
So let's follow on this thread, and then I'll weave in title that I saw, Martin, which I found to be provocative but quite interesting, right? So now I can't remember that's why I did not reshare it on my LinkedIn, because I could not quite tell the name of the publication. It wasn't exactly New York Times, but it said something to the extent Maersk is going after Amazon, or Maersk is going after Amazon and doing deliveries for companies, and obviously you guys bought a couple of very smart acquisitions in technology, e-commerce, and so on. So I don't want to talk too much. Not to be that provocative, and you're not the head of e-commerce necessarily for Maersk, right? But I guess my question is how, when you're talking about moving a lot of these smaller, medium-sized brick and mortar mom and pop shops, right? And then Amit, you have your own solutions, right? How can we do that, right? Are there certain ways in which it can be accelerated, right? Because they wouldn't have billions of dollars to optimize. So let's double click on that segment of the customer base.
Yeah, maybe just if you'll allow me, rather just a quick comment on the first one, and we our strategy and our ambition is to be able to provide our customers with end-to-end solutions, right? So that has been our stated ambition for 5 years, and we're continuing down that path, and we're obviously making acquisitions to plug the gaps in our capabilities, and that includes in the last quarter we acquired 3 e-commerce logistics companies, and just 2 weeks ago we announced some acquisitions in air freight to also complement our offering here. And obviously it's not a direct fight between us and Amazon. There are many competitors out there and many people offering their services, and that's as it should be. So that's fine. And I think in terms of how do we go from bricks and mortar into a more digital supply chain? For me, this is not just one transition. It's many iterations, if you will, and there are a few components that I see in those iterations. I think the first component is to get access to data. And let's be honest, in the beginning, part of that data will be captured manually, but of course, increasingly over time, we need to capture that data automatically. IoT devices, telematics, other sensors, etc., so that we capture the data. The next capability is how do we then handle that data and create visibility and insights from that data that we have captured. And the next thing again is to turn that insight into actions. Then it's implementing those actions, because until it's implemented and executed, actually you get no value from it. And then I see that kind of the last step to automate those actions so that you get ready for the next iteration. And then literally you go back and you collect even more data and you start the whole process over and over again. And I don't think, there's been a lot of discussion about is this more difficult or more easy for a small company compared to a big company? And actually, I'm not sure that there is a clear winner or a clear loser in terms of the size. And I'm also not sure there is a clear winner whether you are a digitally born company or whether you come from bricks and mortar. I think each of these starting points, they come with different advantages and different disadvantages. And I think from all 4 corners, if you will, you have the opportunity to be successful. But of course, if you're not reacting to what's going on in the market, then you will not survive. And that's regardless of whether you're small or large, or whether you are digitally born or a brick and mortar company. I guess we are back to Darwin of survival of the fittest.
I fully echo what you're saying there, Martin. In fact, one of the recent press releases, one of our taglines that we also talking about the Amazon effect is actually, so we help traditional brick and mortar companies and even the new e-commerce companies really deliver an experience equal to or better than Amazon Prime for their consumers, right? And it's really become a benchmark, which is amazing for the company. But today, whatever type of company you are, whatever type of organization that you are, the post-purchase experience is extremely important. If you look at it statistically, 68% of consumers will not go back to the brand unless they had a great post-purchase experience. And today, the post-purchase experience is not just going to a store and purchasing something and walking away. Post-purchase experience actually is how it's delivered to their house or wherever they need to be, even if it's even if it's an enterprise buyer or a
I think we lost Amit. Let's hope he comes back.
Buyer. It's about how. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Froze for a second. Yeah.
All right. So it's about how they get confidence in whether the goods are going to arrive on time in full, whether they're able to return the goods, and they have confidence to be able to do that, whether the quality at the engagement is there, and it's not just some random SMSs and texts coming from different people that the goods are coming. They don't know what the good is, where the goods are, where it is, and they've got tracking numbers that they need to go and look at. It's about simplifying all that and having that one experience, to say, wow, this was an amazing experience. My Levi's jeans was delivered perfectly, or my Electrolux washing machine came in this thing, and I'm in the hotel, and all of them were delivered perfectly. That post purchase experience is going to drive a lot of the need for all of us, Maersk, us, to make sure that we help our customers optimize and digitalize their networks to be able to deliver that. If you don't have a good post purchase experience, pretty much, you're a fast death march, as Martin said.
Yeah, I think the customer experience, or even the stakeholder experience, because there are many stakeholders outside of the customer, even here, is one of those supply chain outcomes that you have to prioritize against cost, not necessarily against, but alongside cost, sustainability, speed, agility, resilience, whatever all those supply chain outcomes may be. And you're right, Amit, that for some products and in some industries, this is absolutely key, and maybe even the most important thing. And look, in other industries, cost will continue to be the main driver, and that's also fine. The important thing is that each company really looks at their own business strategy, or even their own products, because their own products in the same company, of course, may need a different supply chain, and figure out what is it I need. And I think this is one of the big differences from, if you will, the supply chain of the past to the supply chain of the future, is that in the past, the complexity was so difficult to handle that very often it became a one size fits all. So one company would literally only have one or maximum two different supply chains. And I think in the future, lots of companies will get more and more different supply chains, because different products within their product range and different of their customer segments will have different preferences, and therefore ideally they would want to have multiple supply chains. Of course, you can't fragment it completely, then it still becomes impossible to handle. But I think we are really going into a future where we're seeing more specialization and more differentiation in the supply chains.
Some good points. I remember reading. I'm obviously I'm a layman, but I read the book by John Gatorna, and he talked about. I mean, I think he wrote the book 5-10 years ago when he talked about dynamic supply chains, and that was the whole message of the book. Like, you should have supply chains that are customized depending on your customer, and not all customers are equal. Which, I mean, it sounds kind of it makes a lot of sense, but okay, slowly we're getting there. John wrote about it 10 years ago. Hopefully soon enough we're going to implement it. I'll pull this question that came through the event platform, right, from Charan Mupidi. Hearing a lot of end-to-end visibility, but what is it? Who is the best? What can companies do to be the best in class, right? So, okay, if I can put my own spiel on it, it's a lot of buzzwords that are flying around, right? But what exactly is that end-to-end visibility, especially when you don't really control the whole chain? Nobody does, right? Even Maersk, if I mean, there's still stuff that are within, and to his point, what can you do to be best in class with the available data that exists?
Yeah, I can go first, and then Amit, feel free to jump in. I think there's no one provider that trumps others in this space, I feel, and I think actually right now the way to become better is to source data from multiple sources and not rely just on one network or one ecosystem, because there is not one ecosystem that has all the data or has all the visibility. So that would be my immediate reaction.
Absolutely, and when it comes to technology, I'll pick it from a technology perspective. What companies like FarEye, what we are working towards is helping organizations get that end-to-end visibility, and the way, and it's a complex environment we look at, right? So if you look in different markets, the shipping companies, the carriers, and all have very different types of technologies Some don't have technologies at all. So what we are looking to do is, given the fact, we grew out of a very tough logistics environment. Originally the company was founded in India, and we had to work through some very tough logistics environments to be able to provide that visibility, and not just the visibility, but the data accuracy, and getting the right data that you can rely on to make those decisions. So what we have been working on from a technology perspective is classifying carriers into three types. The fully tech-enabled carriers, where we work with telematics, manufacturing companies. We integrate with them so that as we hook into the carriers, we are ready to go with very fast integration to get that data accuracy there gets better. Then there is the semi tech-enabled companies, where we have to work a little bit more with them to enable them, whether it's through devices or we use our applications to track them, and we provide them an application that the drivers can use and provide that information back to us. And then the third one is where we look at integrating with the existing drivers' mobile. If there are some trucking companies that have only a mobile, the driver has a mobile and that's it. There is nothing else outside that. So then how do we enable them to provide that kind of data to make sure that and then we're working with shipping companies and airline companies to drive a much more multimodal visibility, and then being able to connect all of these together. So you take these, and then we also worked in the last mile in visibility to be able to enable delivery service providers, DSPs, delivery service providers, with the ability to provide much more detailed visibility of the movement of goods, shipments at parcel levels, by enabling them with technologies as well. So there's a lot of work that we are working towards that. We've got 22,000 carriers that we put onto our platform with the view to continuously work towards that enable. Does anybody have 100% coverage? No. That's basically what we're working through, and it's not just this now. So visibility has become a buzzword, but it's what do you do with the data? How do you actually drive better decision making based on that? So that's where companies like us layer machine learning on top to then say, right, this is your SLA, but based on the performance of these carriers, based on the performance in these lanes, etc., here is what the ETA is going to be based on what we have seen, what we're gathering from the real-time information that we're getting, but also based on past performances, etc. Right? So then you start looking at how do you get much more predictability in your supply chain, and how you plan better, because you know that the ETAs are going to be away from the SLAs, and what's your plan B? How are you going to change slots in the destination warehouses, etc., etc. There's multiple use cases like that that we need to keep working on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's back to the iteration actually I mentioned before, Radu, where visibility is one part of it, but as you also say, I mean, it's about what you do with that visibility. How do you turn that into real insights, and how do you turn that into actions, and how do you actually implement that and make real value out of the visibility? Lots of people are talking about visibility and thinking that if I just have the visibility, then all my problems are solved, but actually it just gives visibility to a whole set of new problems that then need to be solved. But it's a very important enabler of being able to drive and have a strong supply chain performance. So I certainly understand that there's a lot of focus on it, but for me it's just one component, and it's important to keep iterating on all of the components at the same time, rather than saying now I'm going to get perfect on data, and then I'm going to get perfect on visibility, and then because it takes too long time. So you need to work with the data you have, take the best actions you can take on that, and then have a continuous improvement loop that really runs all the time.
Yeah, and run it in parallel. I mean, there was a picture that it was a meme. As you know, I like memes, and there was this meme with all the ships stuck in the port, right? And there was one arrow saying you're we'll give you visibility. Your shipment is your parcel is right here. I was like, okay, what do you do with that? So, yeah, visibility in and by itself is not that useful. You need to link it with some other good intelligence points. Now, Martin, because you run the lead logistics, right? And that's where you partner at Maersk on on solutions, on end-to-end supply chain solutions with your customers. I guess at a more macro level, right, in terms of sourcing strategies, manufacturing hubs changing. There's also on the topic of sustainability, right? Maybe there's a nearshoring. How do you see this longer supply chains? Are they going to come to be shorter in the future? Is that trend clear? And how is it going to impact also how maybe the supply chain networks of the future will look like?
Yeah, I think one trend is clear, and that is that there's a trend away from single sourcing. There were clearly quite a lot of companies who realized that there was single sourcing somewhere in their supply chain. And some people, I mean, I remember hearing about this, not one of my customers, but I remember hearing about a train, a manufacturer of trains. And what they figured out was that they were single sourcing the seats. And so they couldn't get the seats, and therefore they couldn't deliver a train. And that's a bit of a problem, right? And you can imagine this in all kinds of other scenarios, of course. So there's a very clear trend away from single sourcing, but apart from that, there's no clear trend, I would say, and it really depends on the individual companies and the individual products and industries and so on. There is probably an overall trend that moves where sourcing is moving out of China and typically for now into the rest of Asia. So Southeast Asia is growing very quickly, and China is actually still growing, but growing below the market average, if you will. So market share is slowly shifting out of China. We're also seeing some nearshoring, if you will, where things are moving into Mexico or into Turkey or into Costa Rica and other places for sourcing into Europe and North America, but it's not a lot. And I actually also don't think that it's going to be a lot, because we shouldn't underestimate the value of there's like whole hubs set up around everything from raw materials to semi-finished goods to assembly to a finished product. And of course, it's different in different industries. So some industries will have multiple layers until they get to a finished product, and others will only have more or less one or two, right? So it's a lot easier to move if you only have two echelons in your supply chain, and if you have seven, it's going to take a very long time to move, because all your suppliers will have clustered around your manufacturing sites. And so I think these decisions take quite a long time, also because the capital investments, in manufacturing factories and also just in labor and so on, they're quite big. So it's a slow trend.
Thank you. And Amit, I have another question. Very specific, this one. So Jagdish is asking, yeah, he's asking you, do you actually also see custom integration what's going on in customs, I guess, in real time? Can you go to that level of detail?
So we do track end-to-end to the customers. So if somebody needs to pick up a phone cover from China and deliver it to Brazil, that's fairly normal. And we do track movement of goods across the cross borders, across multi-modes, across this thing at a SKU level, and be able to provide that visibility. We also look at helping customers make decisions on the landed costs of these prior to taking the orders, so you understand. Obviously things change because of exchange rates and all that in real time as things move through the different continents and countries and all. But what we don't do is we don't do customs processing. We're primarily logistics movement SaaS platform, so we track the movement of goods across, but we are not providing the customs integrations. So customs integrations, we have partners who we work with to provide just that specific area. What we do is we make sure that the end customer gets the goods delivered at the time they promised, at the cost that they promised, and the logistics companies understand what's the cost at which that they are accepting the order, and how predictable is it at the end of it. And again, it's ETAs, time planes, and optimizing. So where we work is also looking at carriers and giving decisions around which carrier is best for which route based on the previous history, selection of those carriers, prioritizing routes, etc. And then on the other end, we help in the last mile specifically. We engage with the end consumers to give them the ability to make the last minute decisions on changes in location, etc. The way they can talk to drivers, they can talk to the carriers, and still provide that engagement.
Yeah, thank you.
But not customs integration for sure.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I'm just cognizant of time, so I want to thank both of you for sharing, for joining, and wish you good luck with the Amit. Obviously, you're on a tour finally, and able to come to Europe. Yeah, I know, Martin, you've been here, so hopefully you come back. I'm waiting for you both in Barcelona with Sangria, and wishing you good luck, good end of the year, and a good 2022 ahead. And thanks a lot for joining us once again.
Thanks, Rado, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rado and Martin. Great to talk to you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.